En certification aussi chez Demersboll.
Adrien Tinaoui, CPA-CM, analyste financier chez Atrim Innovation.
Benoît Achon, CPA-CMA, conseiller senior en gestion des risques à la Banque nationale.
Donc, bonjour à tous. Bonjour et chers membres du conseil de AMB modulaire et bienvenue. Merci d'être ici aujourd'hui. Alors aujourd'hui, Troy, Nadia et moi-même de Demersboll allons vous présenter une stratégie de façon à maintenir la position stratégique de AMB dans l'industrie de fournisseurs d'espace notamment, comment maintenir et augmenter votre profitabilité et également comment bien diversifier les activités de l'entreprise de manière à demeurer un meneur dans l'industrie. Alors sans plus attendre, au niveau de l'ordre du jour, on commencera tout d'abord par une analyse de la situation, notamment au niveau de l'industrie d'une part, mais également au niveau de l'entreprise plus particulièrement. Par la suite, nous vous proposerons nos recommandations pour AMB modulaire. Nous procédons par la suite à une analyse plus détaillée de la composante achat ou voir si nous devrions construire ou acheter l'usine. Puis finalement, nous terminerons sur quelques enjeux et autres opportunités opérationnelles. Alors, sans plus attendre, au niveau de l'industrie. Donc, l'industrie des unités modulaires, évidemment, c'est une industrie qui était relativement précaire il y a quelques années. La demande s'est de plus en plus développée et donc l'intérêt s'est également plus développé au cours des dernières années. Ce qui a donc fait que le marché est présentement dominé principalement par AMB modulaire. Donc au niveau des modulaires en milieu scolaire, donc définitivement l'industrie rencontre une difficulté particulière au niveau du fait que la durée des installations doit se faire nécessairement durant le congé estival, donc la période d'installation est nécessairement entre 8 semaines. Au niveau des modulaires institutionnels, la difficulté est plus au niveau des flux de trésorerie, donc les délais de paiement qui sont beaucoup plus longs et donc qui mettent des pressions additionnelles sur les entreprises. Finalement, le financement est généralement difficile dans cette industrie-là. On remarque de plus en plus aussi une pénurie de main-d'œuvre dans les usines, notamment pour produire les unités modulaires. Puis finalement, définitivement, il y a l'industrie caractérisée par de l'instabilité et beaucoup de spéculation, notamment parce que les modules doivent être produits beaucoup d'avance pour une demande plutôt incertaine, bien que la demande se maintienne dans les dernières années. Donc, c'est vraiment caractérisé par de l'instabilité. Maintenant, au niveau plus précisément de AMB. Donc, définitivement, le marché est généralement dans AMB plutôt situé 85% au niveau des modulaires pour les salles de classe, pour les commissions scolaires, pour les universités, pour les cégeps. Et AMB a d'ailleurs le quasi-monopole de cette industrie, notamment contrôlant 90%, générant 90% de l'offre. Et donc, au niveau du 15% restant, donc c'est vraiment des bureaux dans les hôpitaux, qu'on retrouve dans les hôpitaux ou dans les commissions scolaires. Donc, définitivement, à ce niveau-là, on peut voir que la majorité se fait plutôt au niveau scolaire. Maintenant, par la suite, si on regarde une analyse de FFOM, donc une analyse des forces, faiblesses, opportunités et des menaces de l'entreprise, au niveau des forces, c'est une entreprise définitivement qui est meneur au niveau de la location. Sa force réside principalement dans la bonne gestion de ses coûts. On remarque notamment aussi au niveau de ses forces que le financement à long terme de ses activités lui a toujours permis d'aller de l'avant avec la production, toujours fournir la demande. Puis finalement, le processus de soumission compétitif qui a été mis en place dans les dernières années a vraiment permis d'aller chercher des contrats au niveau des appels d'offres publics. Donc les appels d'offres publics notamment qui constituent 90% des revenus de l'entreprise. Donc ça constitue évidemment une très bonne source de revenus stable pour l'instant. Par contre, ce qu'il faut faire attention avec ça, c'est évidemment le fait que l'entreprise est très dépendante au niveau de ces contrats-là. Donc, n'importe quel changement dans la législation pourrait éventuellement affecter l'entreprise de façon significative. Donc, c'est définitivement une force, une faiblesse à tenir en compte. Au niveau des opportunités, il y a des opportunités diverses. Donc, des opportunités notamment dans la diversification des produits offerts. Donc, recycler les produits un peu moins conformes au marché actuel pour les envoyer, pour leur donner une seconde vie, notamment au niveau des chalets dans les parcs, des constructions dans le nord. Donc, c'est vraiment des choses qui se font sur le marché à l'instant. Il y a des opportunités aussi au niveau du marché ontarien qui seront discutées plus en détail dans les prochaines minutes. Finalement, au niveau des menaces, c'est définitivement le prix des unités modulaires. Il faut faire très attention au niveau des prix des unités modulaires. Comme AMB n'est pas présentement celui qui produit les unités modulaires, une fluctuation de prix pourrait grandement affecter la marge de profit actuelle. Et donc, sur ce, je vais laisser la parole à mon collègue.
Merci. So, as we'll see momentarily, we are going to recommend that the factory be purchased in order to further your business operations. We'll see the reasons for this as follows. We are also recommending that more information be obtained with regards to the Ontario market and the new products that customers are requesting from you in order to better determine if this would be an appropriate venture and to determine if it's affordable ultimately and cost effective. We would also recommend the development of the existing products the spaces that are not suitable for institutional use anymore. We'd recommend their further development as well in order to increase your revenues and generate effective sales. First thing that I'm going to cover, which will pop up momentarily, will be the quantitative analysis surrounding the purchase of a factory. So we've done an estimate based on the earnings of the company, and ultimately it will work out to, on the low end, a valuation of approximately $1.4 million. On the high end, we've also estimated this taking into account some potential synergies that may occur, as well as ignoring previous history and only focusing on the most recent year, which would be our high-end valuation of approximately $1.7 million, the financing of which will follow. But ultimately, this would be the purchase cost in order to break into the industry of developing your own modular spaces, not being reliant upon external sources. As it follows, we also have cost savings that will be generated by the new factory. So if we go to the next slide behind me, we can see that currently you're paying approximately $60 a square foot in order to acquire the property that is being rented out to the school boards, to the hospitals, etc. Now, if this new factory is purchased, you can reduce the margin that is being charged to you, the margin that any external customer would charge, of course. You can save approximately 20% per square foot, which would result in a cost savings of about $10.30 per square foot. For instance, last year you had an order of approximately $20,000 from this supplier. If this supplier was purchased, which is consistent with our goals, and we'll see momentarily, you can save approximately $200,000 on the previous purchase and on future purchases of a similar magnitude. Now, if this is also stretched, if further production and purchases are shifted to your factory, which would be in accordance with the purchase, you could achieve economies of scale, which may further increase the cost savings as opposed to buying from external sources. Following this, we're going to look at financing. This is the big question. I know we're proposing you put a lot of money up front to buy this factory, $1.7 million. Where is it going to come from? So we've looked at the projected financial statements that have been provided for the upcoming May 2018. And it's projected that you guys will have approximately $700,000 to $800,000 of cash and cash equivalents on hand, as well as not owing any money on the line of credit. So this will be the initial source for the payment. We'll be drawing on current available cash resources, alternative and additional sources to cover the difference, because of course, having only $700,000, that leaves another $800,000 to $900,000 to be covered. This can be drawn from the line of credit, which is currently completely paid off. And this would put you at approximately a $700,000 amount owing on the line of credit. Alternatively, accounts receivable can be collected, will be collected, which will be used to cover the funding, or additional long-term funding could also be sought with a mortgage on all or part of the purchase of the factory as collateral to the bankers. Currently, the loan terms are quite advantageous, and so this would be an option. as well. I'll pass you to Nadia, who will walk us through the qualitative factors of both a build and a buy scenario, and we'll continue.
Thank you, Troy. So you are considering whether to buy a factory or purchase a factory. So the first thing we looked at is buying a current factory that already exists in a location that you are familiar with because you currently deal with that supplier. So the pros of purchasing that factory is you already know the synergies that can be created through taking over the administration and running it yourself. But you will also have more cost control over production. So you will have control over where the supplies are coming from, you'll have better control of the quality as well as any testing that needs to get done. So you will have a more horizontal control of your supply chain. Next is production flexibility. You are considering maybe expanding your line of products. So by having your own factory, you could see how much extra capacity you have, what equipment there is that exists there already that you could repurpose or use in a different way to produce new products that customers may be interested in. Additionally, you would be looking at better sustainability. Currently, the vendor who owns the factory is using subcontractors and he's not even staffing the factory. Whereas if you were to take over, you could hire your own employees. That would have a con of initial costs and having additional costs in training and whatnot, but you would also be building your presence in the community and developing sustainability in that community, driving the industry and, the economy. Additional cons, however, are some economy risk. As you know, your industry has had ups and downs, and if there's another economic downturn, you could possibly be looking at another downward spiral. So if this is the correct time to purchase, would be a good idea to do a little bit more economic analysis on that front. You would have more financial flexibility because if you find that things are costing too much or you don't have the demand, you could potentially cut back, do some layoffs, have some job sharing, do different methods of cost cutting like that so that you can maintain your presence. And lastly, you would have to get certified. As a new owner, of course, you would have to pass a certification, so you would have to go through that up to 6-month process of doing that. If you then look on the other side of building your own factory, you would have all of the pros that you would have of purchasing a factory, but you would also have the additional pro of customizability. You would be able to choose where you build your factory, how it's laid out, how it's constructed, and really how you want to run it and operate it. There are significant cons to building your own factory. The big one is cost. You would have to invest a large amount in land, materials, construction, and this would also take a lot of time. So if you're looking at something that needs to be done within the next year so that you can expand your fleet, building would probably not get you there faster. Lastly, certification is always going to be the issue, so it would add the additional 6 months after your construction is complete. So for that reason, and all the other reasons Troy mentioned earlier, we're recommending that you buy the factory that is currently available. He is looking to sell. It seems that he's valuing on a liquidation basis. We're looking at the value of his net assets as opposed to any other method of valuation for that business. So he has no staff. He's operating at a minimum with subcontractors to keep himself going. So it's more than likely that this is the best time to buy him out if this is an venue that you're looking forward to. It would allow you to expand your fleet to the additional 60,000. It may not be by next summer as you have to go through the certification process, but if there are different contacts that you have, maybe there's a way to get that working for you and maybe get that process done faster. And lastly, the diversification will be available to you, so you will be able to expand into new product lines. Next, we'll talk about your idea of developing and renovating your current products further so that they can be sold for profit. Currently, this would give you the pros of entering a new market. It looks like you're selling just a little bit on the side there. However, you may have a higher demand for this. So because some of your equipment may be becoming more obsolete and winding down, you would want to renovate that and sell it for the higher profit as opposed to replacement costs, which are a little bit higher, or reproducing the equipment entirely, which would create a lot of waste and a lot of costs on that end. Some cons to that is weather dependency. So if those industries are having a poor season, all of the product that you renovated may just sit in your warehouse because they don't have anywhere to put it. Additionally, you would be a new entrant to this market. There may already be a lot of competition, so a little bit of research needs to be done there. For that reason, we're recommending that you do go ahead with it, even though there are a couple of cons that may be an issue. Additional research could outweigh those. So it's less costly for you than renovating and reconstructing, and there is no other use for some of these products, so you might as well renovate them and make a profit. Next, we're looking at some new products that you're thinking of expanding out. Customers have been inquiring about new products and when or why you haven't produced them already. So some pros are obviously demand. People are inquiring about these products. Second is availability. If you go ahead with our recommendation and purchase this factory, you will have the availability to produce more products because you will have more space and you will have more time and you will have all of those things available to you. Cons, research and development can always be a costly factor, and a lot of those costs may not be capitalizable, so you're looking at higher expensive. This may minimize your earnings and increase your debt, so you may also be looking at breaking some of your bank covenants, and of course there's going to be some business risk involved there. And Christiane will move on to the Ontario market. Oh, I'm sorry, recommendation. This is why we recommended that you not go ahead with this, because there's such high risks involved.
Thank you, Nadia.
Sorry,
Okay,
Christiane.
so moving on to the Ontario market, so that's another opportunity that you're looking at currently. The Ontario market is slightly different from the Quebec market. So in the Quebec market, typically clients are more willing to rent, and on the Ontario side, they're more looking to buy modules. And so therefore, this is a huge benefit for you because you would get some cash upfront financing. And so as opposed to renting it and having delayed payments, this would potentially decrease and eliminate some of the pressure on the cash flows. Something else to consider, definitely, if you would be selling to the Ontario market, you have some inventory in order to make sure you can meet the demand, and so this would potentially improve the financial position as more inventory would be carried on your books. On the other hand, obviously there would be some inventory risk that need to be considered. Also the fact that you'd be a new entrant on that market, and therefore potentially marketing expenses would have to go up in the first periods in order to make sure you penetrate that market properly. So overall, we recommend that you do not go forward with this business opportunity just yet. If you go forward with the factory, definitely this is something to consider in the upcoming years. We would recommend you obtaining additional information about the production capacity in the factory. So more information would be required in order to determine how many units could be sent to the Ontario market, as well as how many units could be absorbed by the Ontario market. So I'll pass on to George.
Thank you, Christiane. So to summarize, we've seen that buying a factory is much more cost effective than building your own factory, and that it would be ready for use much sooner. We've also seen that some markets show potential for investment, but then more information will be required in order to quantify and give a stronger recommendation as to which or both markets should be pursued and whether it would be economically feasible for you to do so. And we would also recommend that the product development of the existing units which are unsuitable for the current use be undertaken because of significant cost savings and revenues that will be generated for the company. These units are of little use to you if they can't be rented out to institutions or other larger organizations which are looking for this space. And so that could be, in accordance with your strategy of expansion and diversification, a very strong option for you to pursue. With that in mind, we'd like to thank you, and if you have any questions for us, you're welcome.
I will start. In summer 2018, we have 60,000 square feet of models we want to attack in the market.
Right.
Is your plan suggesting anything about that, or is it possible to have those?
So in terms of achieving the 60,000 units, because currently there's 100,000 which are available for rent, and there are some other units which would require renovation and would not be available. If the factory were to be purchased either through the use of subcontractors or your own employees which would be hired, you would actually have the ability to produce these units that would be required, and potentially at a significant discount for which the units that you are available to produce, as compared to any remaining units which may need to be bought from either your current supplier or other suppliers.
Okay, let's say they're all used, like 100% of my actual models are going to be used in 2019, but I still want to produce 60,000 more in December 2018.
Right.
I could just buy more from my from the factory, and wouldn't be a problem.
So currently the factory, based on previous use, has produced about 20,000 units by our analysis. In this case, if you purchase it prior to the summer, you'll have a longer run-up in order to supply the majority of the units that you require. I'm assuming, based on the information that we provided, that it's approximately 8 weeks was the production period available last year and the time for building, and I think it's about double at the current time. So that would cover the majority of the units needed, and then the remainder, as you said, the remaining units can't be renovated in time. They would have to be sourced externally.
Okay. Can you give me a timeline of, we're in December, of how we should buy the factory and how it's gonna...
So subject to your current financing conditions, if you can collect on the accounts receivable sooner than May of 2018, the sooner you can purchase the factory, the more of these units that you would be able to produce internally, as opposed to having to buy them at a premium outside. Currently, I think we would be targeting approximately March, which would give you sufficient time to produce all of the units required in advance of the installation period, but that would be subject to financing and the estimates in the forecast.
One of your recommendations after purchasing the factory is to pursue product development. How do you intend to finance the product development?
So the existing product development that you have, currently it's estimated about $50 a square foot, and can be resold for $100. Now this assumes, of course, that these products are not going to be renovated and used in future years, so in 2019 and future. If that is to be done, of course, there wouldn't be, those products wouldn't be available to be developed. But even with that, you would still have sufficient room on the line of credit in order to develop a reasonable portion which can be sold, and the sales will drive future funding that would be available for further development at that time.
One of your financing proposition for buying the factory I think you said just getting our accounts receivable in time. I think one of the other option was getting debt or a loan from a bank. Do you think our debt ratio is a problem?
Currently, I don't think that a loan from a bank would be required, that you could afford to finance it from the line of credit, but it is possible that, subject to the covenants established by the bank, that the bank may ask more questions about the nature of the loan and look more closely at the financial statements. The biggest discussion that you would need to have with the banker is the increase in revenue and the cost savings that are going to be generated, as well as the ability to probably mortgage the property as collateral as well, so that the bank knows that they have security and some recourse in the event that an untimely occurrence happens in the market.
Perfect.
Yeah, maybe about the factory. Will you keep in place the subcontractors?
In the immediate term, I would, simply because the subcontractors they're already in place, they're trained, and they know how to operate the equipment that's held. But over the longer term, it would be more cost effective to hire your own employees, and it's possible that the existing subcontractors could be used to train these future employees to reduce training costs, as well as training stress on yourselves, having to develop a training program, potentially changing equipment, and then, of course, not only familiarizing yourselves with that, but familiarizing your new employees once you feel comfortable with that material. So it may be more cost effective in the short term to keep the subcontractors, but long term hiring your own employees would be more cost effective.
Et si je peux rajouter à ça, ce serait aussi dans l'optique d'aller vers une stratégie plus d'intégration verticale, donc qui est en ligne avec la stratégie actuelle, donc contribuer à la prospérité de l'entreprise, qui était la gestion des coûts. Donc évidemment, en réduisant les intermédiaires, ça pourrait évidemment contribuer à cette stratégie-là. Puis donc dans cette même ligne d'idées-là, ce serait éventuellement de moins se fier aux sous-consommateurs.
La période de questions est terminée.
Merci.
Merci.